Hi, good morning everyone. So it's June, it's Pride Month, and today we will be talking about different Pride movements around the country. So we're all familiar with Metro Manila Pride, but today we will be joined by representatives from Bisdak Pride and Mindanao Pride, and we will be talking about the different issues and challenges that are unique to their communities. So to start, we have here Ham from Mindanao Pride. So Ham, can you give us a brief introduction to Mindanao Pride? I understand it's a fairly new movement.
Yes, Mindanao Pride started last June 24, 2017. It is actually started by a few LGBT members who are born and raised in Mindanao.
Right.
And Mindanao Pride is a coalition of different organizations. I mean, this is how we envision it to be, you know,
Right.
coalitions of LGBT movements in Mindanao as well as
Right.
individuals. And I think most importantly, we also want to highlight allyship. You know,
Right.
we want to gain allies who can actually support, you know, with the people with diverse sexual orientation and gender identity.
Right. So what made you decide to start Mindanao Pride in like 2017?
Basically because I think my Mindanao Pride, or my goal, or the reason why I established Mindanao Pride is because it is born or rooted out of my passion for gender equality,
Yeah.
as well as I have an ownership to the issue because I myself is a gay
Right.
person, and I'm born and raised in Mindanao,
Right.
which, you know, I was raised in a society where there's rigid stereotypes, especially that the island is predominantly rural.
All right, and we will discuss those issues and
Yeah.
challenges later on. For Bisdak Pride, I understand it's not limited to just one. It's an interesting use of Bisdak Pride, so it's not limited to a geographical location. So why Bisdak Pride? How did it start? And
Bisdak Pride was established more than 10 years ago,
right,
and in collaboration with other partners in Cebu and neighboring provinces in the Visayas Islands. We are a human rights group for persons with a diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, and other sexual characteristics.
right, okay. And so earlier you touched on issues and challenges that you face as someone from Mindanao. Can you give us some examples of this, and then what initiatives that Mindanao Pride is taking?
Okay. I think being LGBT is also a struggle, right? Or
Yeah.
it's already a challenge. But I think it's even more challenging if you are raised in an environment where there is poverty and armed conflict. So I
Right.
think those two things are what are the things that are unique to the issues of Mindanao. So basically, people there are more I experience more exclusion, experience more violence. You know, in an article by one of our gay magazine, they talked about gay beauticians being gunned down, especially in
Mindanao.
in Mindanao, especially on in the areas of the autonomous Muslim Mindanao, or the ARMM, Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao.
Right. So there's conflict and violence on a national level and specific to that area, and at the same time, members of the LGBT community are especially targeted, would you say? Or
Yes.
so I guess the added layer
Yeah.
of difficulty. Is there anything that Mindanao Pride is doing, or its allies, in order to help members of the LGBT community that are struggling with these things?
Since we are a new organization, we
Right.
are still actually in the process of establishing the organization. So we are getting more allies, we're getting more funders, or people who can potentially support the campaign. But right now, we are raising awareness of that LGBT people actually exist in Mindanao. And these issues are actually, this is not something that is a Western idea like others would actually argue about it. Like, you know, Mindanao, LGBT is something that is from the US, or it is a foreign idea. But actually it's not, because I exist. So I am more like a manifestation that there are LGBT people in Mindanao. So we're also doing we're also planning to do lobbying, advocating and lobbying to the different cities and provinces in Mindanao to ensure that there is a gender inclusive policy, and also to ensure that they will have ordinances focusing on anti-discrimination.
Ordinances focusing on anti-discrimination. And how about for Bisdak Pride? What are your priorities and initiatives?
We are currently implementing a project funded by the Forum for Family Planning in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to actually perform theater for development in areas where cases of HIV and teenage pregnancy is high. So we targeted 10 sites in the province of Cebu, wherein our group, the Bisdak Pride Theater Collective, will perform theater forum. So we will portray issues that affects the ordinary lives of young adolescents, specifically the LGBTs in the outside the city of Cebu.
And what are the unique issues or challenges with people from the Visayas or the Visayas-speaking areas face in terms of?
Yeah, in the aftermath of Yolanda, we are actually affected by the Typhoon Haiyan. So after Typhoon Haiyan, we organized a national conference on LGBTs who survived Yolanda, and we actually heard their voices. So when I was in Bangkok last 2 weeks ago, I presented the conference, the results of the conference, and the entire UN Women and the entire Asia Pacific delegates were amazed by the resiliency of the LGBT survivors, because the LGBT survivors are themselves breadwinners and those affected by Yolanda. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It talks about more on inclusion of LGBT in the entire humanitarian system. So I co-wrote a case study on the impact of Typhoon Haiyan to the LGBT communities in the entire Visayas. So our scope after Yolanda basically involves the entire Visayas Islands.
So talking about including the LGBT communities in humanitarian efforts, and can you share with us some of your findings in that study?
Yeah, basically it talks, the finding discussed about in some rural areas in the Visayas, at least in one barangay, there are 2 to 3 beauty parlors, right? In a particular beauty parlor, there are at least 2 to 3 gays managing it, right? So that involves 3 families. So these 3 families basically are being the breadwinner are the LGBTs themselves. So during the relief operations, during the response, some of these LGBTs were excluded from receiving aid from various entities because they're actually gays or LGBT. So the problem right there and then exists. It doubles the discriminations of the LGBTs who survived the Typhoon Haiyan. So we presented that case to the conference in Bangkok, and they realized the importance of inclusion of the LGBT in the entire humanitarian system.
So would you say that they were excluded from being beneficiaries because they were not? Because your traditional idea
of a family
or a breadwinner would be a father who is employed.
Exactly.
But in this case,
they are not.
Yeah.
They are the breadwinners. And it is common knowledge in far-flung areas that actually the LGBTs are the breadwinners. And even in some cities in the Philippines, it is common knowledge that we are the ones, providing relief, support to our families. It is just that society are, bias towards us.
So Roxanne touched on how members of the LGBT community were excluded from receiving aid because, they don't fit the traditional picture of what a breadwinner would be, I guess, in the sense of the families and things like that. And I also understand that there are efforts in Mindanao to help people in conflict areas. Do you see that same kind of exclusion or discrimination?
Yes.
Is it even harder because people are conservative, or for example, growing up in a Muslim environment or family and then being LGBT?
Yeah. I think in Mindanao, it's not only they're not being excluded, but they're actually they're invisible.
Right.
Like they're actually left they're excluded in their families, and they don't even being considered to be part of the relief efforts. That's one thing that I know and I heard of from the stories of some of our members in the LGBT community. And that's why what's happening right now is that these LGBT people are actually creating their own community, helping one another. That is something that is promising that I see in our community, is that people are creating this own communities of support.
Right.
And I think that is one thing that we can bank on as a new movement in Mindanao, helping LGBT people, is to touch on their lives or to empower them. Yeah.
Right. Are there any concrete examples of how the community has stepped up to support members?
LGBT.
Yeah.
For now, we are doing this awareness campaign on the issues of LGBT in Mindanao. I think this is also one thing where we have to, especially that we're still starting, and in December, which is more of like the celebration of our Mindanao Pride events. So we have 3 activities. We have this leadership conference where we are able to, we're planned to highlight the issues specific to LGBTs in Mindanao. And second would be the Diversity Seed project series, where we provide seed funding to small mini projects focusing on LGBT empowerment. And the third one would be the Pride March, which is set on December 10. This is something that is very exciting because for us it is fresh, it is new. It is our first Pride March.
It's the first Pride March in
Yes.
Mindanao. Why do you think it took so long for...
I think because it is, as I said earlier, I
Yeah.
think it's very challenging because we are Mindanao's with different ethnic backgrounds,
Yes.
cultural differences, and with all of this armed conflict that is happening. I think it took us so long to establish this because they think that LGBT issues is not a priority.
Right.
Yes, they think that it is actually nothing.
So, I understand Pride Month is June. Why the decision to celebrate it in December?
I think it's because we want to ensure that Mindanao Pride is highlighted every December, especially that every June it's known to all that it's the Metro Manila Pride, and also then September would be the Bisdak or the Visayas Pride. So we want it to be on December, and at the same time, it is also in conjunction for the International Human Rights Day,
Right.
which is set on December 10.
And Bisdak Pride celebrates their Pride March, September. Why the choice of September?
Well, because it is just, the group decided to basically conduct, but it is not a fixed schedule.
Right.
Because our past experience, we conducted it last December 1 in
Right.
Cebu, when we co-organized a national conference of LGBTs all over the Philippines in Cebu.
And if I were someone, for example, from Mindanao or from Cebu or Leyte, how could I participate? How do I become, or if I were a straight ally, for example, how do I become an advocate, or how do I bring myself into the fold of your different movements?
Well, basically, we have 4 core programs. First, we have Queer Theology, which was helped by our friend in the Chicago Theological Seminary more than 8 years ago. So they help us shape what queer theology is all about. So we have some allies there who are theologians, who are non-LGBTs, but they help us discuss about the importance of theological understanding in the context of sexual and gender diversity. We also have, so they can volunteer in that. We also have what we call a queer politics program, wherein we organize communities, LGBT communities, including non-LGBTs, because we want also inclusion in several of our endeavors. We have queer health program and environmental concerns, because in the aftermath of Yolanda, we really lobbied for the inclusion of LGBT in all of the undertakings, like response, like rehabilitation. So we have 4 projects in the aftermath of Yolanda. Some were funded by UNICEF, and the other were funded by the Tanghalang Pilipino, which they trained us on theater for development.
Right.
Then we also have a radio program wherein we have some allies. We have a daily radio program which tackles on the daily, the ordinary lives of LGBTs in the Visayas-speaking areas. So we call that program Patas ang Gugma, or Love is Equal. The program basically was provided to us for free by a local radio station, DYCN, since they are also allies in the gender equality advocacy, like that. And of course, we have the Queer Culture and Arts program, which is currently implementing a project on theater for development. So all of these endeavors, the four core programs of our organizations, we have allies, we have a lot of volunteers, especially on the HIV and AIDS program, currently being supported by the Department of Health.
Right. And how will I reach out to you, or do you have upcoming events?
Yeah. We have a very active social media exposure and endeavors, and a lot of people, basically, especially the young adolescents, always message us on how they can join.
Right.
So by June, July, August, September, until November, we have a weekly, what we call Theater for Development performance in 10 sites in Cebu. We also have a community-based screening, which is currently being supported by various foreign funding agencies.
So if I want to volunteer, I should just visit your Facebook page?
Facebook, and they will message us, and they will give them a schedule.
Right. Thank you. And for Mindanao Pride?
For Mindanao Pride, we are also active on social media, and I think that it is one of the tools that we use to ensure that our message are put across to all different to different audiences. And I think that if you're from Mindanao, I think that just messaging us in Mindanao, we're very active there. So just signing up to volunteer or to attend our events. And well, that's also one thing, is that we are also reachable through our email. Yeah, so that's secretariat@mindanaopride.org. So whenever there's an interest to participate in any of the events, then we're very open. Even in our core group, we are we don't our one is non-discriminatory society, or that's our vision. So we ensure that anyone this with diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, especially straight people, heterosexual people, we really want them to be part of the movement.
Yes. All right, thank you. So that's it for today's Rappler Talk. We got to know Bisdak Pride and Mindanao Pride a little bit better, and as they mentioned, if you want to be part of their movements, join any of their initiatives, or take part in any of their events, you can just look them up on Facebook. That's Mindanao Pride and Bisdak Pride.